The great chamber of the Glycan Ascendancy was a cavern of living crystal, its facets shimmering with the captured light of 1,000 dying stars. Here, where the fate of worlds was decided, silence was a weapon, and every whisper a potential tremor in the foundations of their ancient civilization. High Chancellor Valen, his chitinous exoskeleton a deep, resonant indigo, stood before the swirling datasphere at the chamber's heart, the faces of his fellow council members suspended within its nebulous glow like ghosts in a storm. For cycles, they had debated, their voices a low, rumbling chorus of fear and uncertainty. The subject, as it had been for so long, was humanity. And at the heart of their dread was a single, terrifying enigma. The ghost ship, the vessel that had vanished into the void only to reappear in their sensor logs as an omen of impossible power. Valen's multifaceted eyes, each lens a perfect hexagon, swept across the anxious faces in the datasphere. He saw the rigid posture of General Kale, his crimson carapace a testament to a lifetime of warfare, his mandibles twitching with suppressed aggression. He saw the ethereal calm of Lumina, the high priestess, her form almost translucent, her thoughts a serene but troubled current in the chamber's psychic resonance. And he saw the cold, calculating gaze of Xyler, the chief scientist, his slender limbs constantly adjusting the flow of data, his mind a labyrinth of logic and deduction. They were the pillars of the Ascendancy, and they were all afraid. "It is a phantom," Kale's voice boomed, the crystals of the chamber vibrating in sympathy. "A ghost story concocted by our deep space augurs to sow fear. The humans are a young species, barely out of their stellar cradle. They possess no technology that could account for such readings. A ship that disappears, then returns as a weapon of galactic scale, it is a fantasy, a dangerous one." Xyler, his voice a dry rustle of ancient parchment, countered without emotion. "The readings are not fantastical, General. They are paradoxical. The energy signature is unlike anything in our archives. It is both there and not there, a quantum superposition on a macro scale. It radiates a power that could destabilize a star, yet it is as silent as the void itself. We cannot dismiss what we cannot comprehend." Lumina's voice, a soft, melodic chime, flowed into the chamber, a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. "Fear is the true phantom here. We project our own anxieties onto this phenomenon. We have observed the humans for generations. They are chaotic, emotional, yet they possess a strange resilience, a capacity for hope even in the face of annihilation. Perhaps this ship is not a weapon, but a manifestation of that hope." Valen listened, his own thoughts a turbulent sea. He had studied the humans more than any of them. He had watched their first clumsy steps into the cosmos, their bloody internal conflicts, their breathtaking bursts of creativity and compassion. They were a species of contradictions, a symphony of chaos and order, and that made them dangerously unpredictable. The ship, the Odyssey, had vanished without a trace decades ago on a mission to the galactic rim. The humans had mourned its loss, a tragic footnote in their expansion. Then, cycles later, it had reappeared, not as a derelict but as something else. A presence on the edge of their space, a silent, watchful giant that defied all known laws of physics. "The humans have been contacted," Valen said, his voice cutting through the debate. "They have responded. They are sending an envoy." A wave of shock rippled through the council. Kale's mandibles clicked in agitation. An envoy? To what end? To explain their new superweapon, to issue their demands. "They say they come to talk," Valen replied, his gaze fixed on the swirling datasphere. "They say they want to share their story, the story of the Odyssey." The journey to the Glycan homeworld was a silent one. The human envoy ship, the Stargazer, was a vessel of stark simplicity, its lines clean and utilitarian, a stark contrast to the ornate, crystalline warships of the Ascendancy. Inside, Ambassador Thorne sat in quiet contemplation, the star-strewn vista of hyperspace a familiar, comforting sight. He was an old man, his face a roadmap of a life lived in the service of diplomacy. He had seen the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of stars. He had negotiated with beings of pure energy and with creatures of living stone. But this mission, this was different. This was about more than just a treaty or a trade agreement. This was about the future of their species, and perhaps the future of the galaxy. His companion, Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose intellect was as vast as the cosmos he studied, sat beside him, his eyes closed in meditation. Eris was a physicist, a philosopher, a visionary. He was one of the few who truly understood what the Odyssey had become. He had been a part of the project from its inception, a young, idealistic scientist who had dreamed of touching the face of creation. Now, he was the keeper of a terrible and beautiful secret. "They will be afraid," Thorne said, his voice a low rumble. Eris opened his eyes, his gaze clear and steady. "They have every right to be. We were afraid too, at first. The power we have unlocked, it is the power of a god, and we are still just men." "But we are not gods," Thorne said, his voice firm. "We are explorers, we are seekers of knowledge. That is what the Glycans must understand. The Odyssey is not a weapon. It is a key." "A key to what?" Eris mused, his eyes drifting back to the stars. "That is the question we are all asking." The stargazer dropped out of hyperspace at the designated coordinates, a mote of dust in the shadow of the Glycan fleet. A fleet of crystalline warships, their facets glittering like a swarm of angry jewels, surrounded them. Their comms crackled to life, a chorus of alien languages, all demanding their surrender. Thorne smiled. "They are certainly thorough." He activated the universal translator. "This is Ambassador Thorne of the United Human Systems. We come in peace, as requested." There was a long silence, then a single, authoritative voice cut through the chatter. It was Valen. "We have been waiting for you, Ambassador. Welcome to Glycan." The meeting took place in the Great Chamber, the same cavern of living crystal where the Glycan Council had debated for so long. Thorne and Eris stood before the datasphere, two small, fragile figures in the vast, intimidating space. The faces of the council members stared down at them, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and outright hostility. Valen's voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, boomed around them. "You have come a long way, humans. We trust you have a satisfactory explanation for the anomaly in our space." Thorne inclined his head. "Chancellor Valen, members of the council, we have come to offer not just an explanation, but an invitation to understand what we have become." He gestured to Eris, who stepped forward. Eris looked at the faces in the datasphere, his gaze calm and unwavering. He began to speak, his voice clear and resonant, and as he spoke, he wove a story that was both a scientific treatise and a breathtaking epic. He spoke of humanity's insatiable curiosity, their relentless drive to explore the unknown. He spoke of the Odyssey, a ship built not for war, but for discovery. Its mission, he explained, was to travel to the Great Attractor, a gravitational anomaly at the edge of the galaxy, a place where the laws of physics seemed to break down. "We wanted to see what was on the other side," Eris said, his voice filled with a quiet passion. "We wanted to understand the fundamental nature of reality." He described the Odyssey's journey, the long, lonely years in the void. He spoke of the strange phenomena the crew had encountered, the whispers of other dimensions, the echoes of other universes. He explained how they had finally reached the Great Attractor and how they had passed through it. A murmur of disbelief went through the council. Zyler's voice, sharp and incredulous, cut through the chamber. "Passed through it? The Great Attractor is a singularity, a point of infinite density. Nothing can pass through it." Eris smiled. "Not in your dimension, perhaps, but the universe is larger than you imagine. The Great Attractor is not an end, but a gateway, a doorway to the multiverse." He went on to explain how the Odyssey had been transformed by its journey. It had been unmade, its atoms scattered across an infinite number of realities. And then it had been remade. Not as a ship of metal and wire, but as a being of pure consciousness, a nexus of all the possible universes. It had become a living equation, a sentient thought that existed in all places and all times. "The Odyssey is not a weapon," Eris said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It is a library containing all the knowledge of all the universes. It is a bridge between realities, a testament to the infinite potential of life." The council was silent, stunned into disbelief. Kale's voice, when it finally came, was a choked whisper. "A library? You have created a god of knowledge, and you call it a library." "We did not create it," Eris corrected him gently. "We unlocked it, and its knowledge is not ours to keep. It belongs to everyone, to all life in all its forms. He raised his hand, and the datasphere flickered. The swirling vortex of light resolved into a single, breathtaking image, a swirling nebula of impossible colors, a stardusted tapestry of 1,000,000 galaxies. But it was more than just an image. It was alive. The Glycans could feel its presence, a gentle, overwhelming intelligence that filled their minds with a sense of wonder and awe. "This is the Odyssey," Eris said. "This is what we have to offer you, not a we." A pawn, but a conversation. A chance to ask the universe its secrets and to hear its answers. The chamber was silent for a long time. The Glycans stared at the image of the Odyssey, their ancient fears and prejudices melting away in the face of such overwhelming beauty and power. Valen, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the nebula's light, finally spoke, his voice filled with a newfound humility. "We have much to discuss." The days that followed were a whirlwind of diplomacy and discovery. The Glycans, their initial fear replaced by a cautious curiosity, began to engage with the humans. They asked questions, endless questions, and the humans answered with patience and honesty. They shared their knowledge, their technology, their philosophy. And as they did, a new understanding began to dawn between the two species. The Glycans, a race of warriors and mystics, had always seen the universe as a place of conflict and competition. They had built their empire on strength and discipline, their society a rigid hierarchy of castes and clans. The humans, with their chaotic democracy, their celebration of individuality, their relentless pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, were a revelation. They were not conquerors, but partners. They were not a threat, but an opportunity. The Odyssey, now a permanent fixture in Glycan space, became a symbol of this new alliance. It was a place of pilgrimage, a sanctuary of knowledge where scholars and scientists from both species could come to study and learn. They explored the infinite library of the multiverse, uncovering secrets that would have taken them millennia to discover on their own. They learned of new forms of life, new laws of physics, new ways of being. But the Odyssey was more than just a library. It was also a warning. It had seen things in its travels, things that had shaken it to its core. It had seen empires rise and fall, stars born and die. It had seen the beginning of time and the end of all things, and it had seen a shadow, a darkness that was spreading across the multiverse, consuming everything in its path. It was a force of entropy, a cosmic predator that fed on life and consciousness. It was the antithesis of everything the humans and the Glycans held dear, and it was coming. The revelation came during a joint session of the human and Glycan councils, held within the heart of the Odyssey itself. The swirling nebula of light coalesced into a single, clear image, a vast, swirling vortex of darkness, a hungry void that was slowly, inexorably, devouring the light of a distant galaxy. A wave of cold dread washed over the assembled delegates. This was a threat beyond their comprehension, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with or fought with conventional weapons. It was Thorn who broke the silence, his voice a beacon of calm in the storm of their fear. "We have faced darkness before, we have faced extinction, and we have survived. We have survived because we have stood together, as a species and now as a partnership." He looked at Valen, his old eyes filled with a new and powerful resolve. "The Odyssey has given us a gift of knowledge and a gift of time. We know what is coming. We know what we must do." Valen nodded, his indigo carapace gleaming in the nebula's light. "We will face this threat together. The Glycan ascendancy will stand with humanity. We will be their sword, and they will be our shield." And so, a new alliance was forged, born not of fear, but of a shared purpose. The humans, with their boundless curiosity and their incredible technology, and the Glycans, with their ancient wisdom and their unbreakable will, would stand together against the coming darkness. The Odyssey, the ship that had disappeared, the ship that had become a superweapon, had now become something more. It had become a symbol of hope, a beacon in the darkness, a promise of a future where all life in all its forms could stand together as one. The final scene is not of a battle or of a victory. It is of a quiet moment of reflection, a conversation between two old friends. Thorn and Valen stand on the observation deck of a Glycan starship, looking out at the stardusted expanse of the galaxy. The Odyssey hangs in the distance, a shimmering jewel of impossible light. "We have come a long way," Valen says, his voice a low rumble. Thorn smiles, "And we have a long way to go." They stand in silence for a moment, two beings from different worlds, united by a common destiny. The universe is a vast and dangerous place, but they are no longer alone. They have each other, and they have the Odyssey. The camera pulls back slowly until the starship is just a tiny speck of light in the vastness of space. The Odyssey continues to shine, a beacon of hope in the face of an uncertain future. And as the screen fades to black, a single, final thought echoes in the silence of the void. A thought from the Odyssey itself, a message of hope and defiance that will etch across the multiverse for all time. "We are here, we are one, and we are not afraid." The story had just begun. The universe was far larger and more complex than either the humans or the Glycans had ever imagined. The darkness they faced was but a symptom of a much deeper cosmic imbalance, a conflict that had been raging since the dawn of time. The Odyssey, in its journey through the multiverse, had stumbled upon an ancient war, a war between the forces of creation and destruction, a war that was now spilling over into their own reality. The shadow they had seen was not just a mindless force of entropy, but a sentient entity, a being of immense power and malevolence that sought to undo all of creation. It was the weaver of lies, the eater of worlds, a being that had been imprisoned for eons in a pocket dimension, but was now breaking free. The Odyssey had not just been a passive observer in its travels. It had been changed. It had absorbed not just knowledge, but also a purpose. It had become the guardian of a forgotten legacy, the last remnant of a civilization that had fought and died to protect the multiverse from the weaver of lies. The humans and the Glycans, now united, found themselves at the forefront of this ancient war. They were no longer just two species, but the heirs to a cosmic responsibility. They had to reawaken the ancient technologies of the precursor race, technologies that were scattered across the galaxy, hidden in forgotten ruins and on long-dead worlds. Their journey took them to the heart of a black hole, where they found a city of light, a place where time and space were fluid. They traveled to the edge of the universe, where they encountered beings of pure thought, the last survivors of a galaxy consumed by the weaver of lies. They delved into the quantum foam, the very fabric of reality, where they learned to manipulate the laws of physics in ways they had never dreamed possible. The war was long and brutal. They fought battles on a scale that beggared the imagination, battles that were waged not just in physical space, but also in the realm of ideas, in the very fabric of consciousness. They lost ships, they lost worlds, they lost friends, but they never lost hope. And in the end, it was not their weapons or their technology that saved them. It was their humanity, their capacity for love, for compassion, for sacrifice. It was these qualities that the weaver of lies could not understand, could not corrupt. It was these qualities that gave them the strength to fight on, even when all seemed lost. In the final, climactic battle, they did not destroy the weaver of lies. They healed it. They showed it the beauty and the wonder of creation, the infinite potential of life. They showed it that there was another way, a way of cooperation and coexistence, a way of love. And the weaver of lies, for the first time in its long and lonely existence, felt a glimmer of hope. It receded back into its prison dimension, not as a vanquished foe, but as a changed being, a being that had been touched by the light of humanity. The war was over, but the journey was far from finished. The universe was still a vast and mysterious place, full of wonders and dangers yet to be discovered. The humans and the Glycans, now bound together by a shared history and a common purpose, set out once more to explore the infinite frontier of the multiverse. The Odyssey, their guide and their protector, led the way, its light a beacon of hope in the endless night. And as they traveled, they carried with them the lessons they had learned, the lessons of unity, of compassion, of the enduring power of the human spirit. For they were no longer just humans and Glycans. They were the children of the Odyssey, the guardians of the multiverse, the keepers of the flame of life. And their story, a story of hope and redemption, would be told and retold for all time, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of times, the light of humanity can never be extinguished. The end was just another beginning in a universe that was finally, truly awake.